We live in interesting times. Today's stories. A coastal erosion in Togo threatens a local population.
Towards the horizon reveals a likely culprit for the coastal erosion.
Fire on Greek island causes major damage to wildlife habitat. Hong Kong pro-democracy lawmakers not to condemn airport beatings.
Have decided not to use the word condemn as of now because we will.
Brazilians march against public education budget cuts. The World Health Organization says Ebola drug breakthrough in DR Congo. Great news.
Modifications have been made to the treatment of Ebola patients.
Greta Thunberg departs for a 2-week sailing trip to the U.S.
Good luck, Greta.
NASA descends on Icelandic lava field to prepare for Mars.
We were getting exactly the kind of patterns of material transfer.
Plus, in center stage one-act play, the lesson plan touches on personal loss and relationships.
Really had to work with the cast on being able to tell the same story once and tell it well.
I'm Anna Kui with Eagle News, broadcasting from Las Vegas, bringing you stories from around the globe. Every year in Togo, the sea nibbles more than 2 meters of coastline and up to 10 meters in some parts of the coast. Coastal erosion affects all of West Africa and is distorting Togo's landscape and driving out fishing communities. Here's the report.
Along Togo's coast, just east of the capital Lomé, villagers are feeling the devastation of sea level rise. Only the remains of this fishing village are left standing. Kojo and his family had to leave their fisherman's cabin when the water began to rise.
The house, everything, there's nothing left. We're here suffering. We are suffering. I don't know where we're going to be able to stay right now.
The sea reclaims up to 10 meters of land on this coast every year. Entire communities have been forced to flee. In Bagida, 500 people made a living from fishing. They have not received any government assistance to relocate or rebuild.
We have no way of finding the money to rebuild our house.
A glance towards the horizon reveals a likely culprit for the coastal erosion, the constant stream of gigantic cargo ships in and out of the port of Lomé. Locals allege that after the port's construction in 1967, the sea level began to rise.
The main reason for the erosion is the infrastructure of the port along the coast that disrupts sediment transit.
This dike in the harbor blocks the sand currents that would otherwise build up the coast. Global warming is also accelerating the erosion process.
Climate change, with its warming effect on the planet due to melting glaciers and rising seawater temperatures, is an aggravating factor in coastal erosion.
In all, 3,000 people have been displaced by the rising sea level. Several hundred others are awaiting their fate, anxiously watching the waters.
Firefighters on the Greek island of Evia were still battling Wednesday to contain a fire that has caused massive damage to a pristine mountain wildlife habitat after threatening 4 communities. Aboard a fire department bus, Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis told reporters, quote, "Things are going better, but we must not relax our vigilance." The blaze burned for a second day in a ravine at the 550-hectare wildlife habitat of Aguilitsa, causing major damage to pine forests. Acting Regional Governor Kostas Bakoyannis said, quote, "It's a huge ecological disaster in a unique, untouched pine forest." Officials said the fire that broke out in the early hours of Tuesday on Greece's second-largest island prompted the evacuation of 3 villages and threatened the town of Sachna during the night. Thanasis Karakatsas, a deputy regional civil protection officer, told state agency ANA, quote, "From Sachna to Konto Despoti and Makrimali, everything has been burnt down. It's fortunate that we do not have human victims." Over 200 firefighters were in action, backed by 75 fire trucks, 9 water bombing helicopters, and 7 planes along a 7-mile front, managing to avert damage to inhabited areas. Hong Kong's pro-democracy lawmakers has stopped short of condemning the beatings on the second day of airport mass disruptions, saying the community will understand the protesters' apologies and the city's leader bears responsibility.
The community will understand that our young have apologized, and that wouldn't and shouldn't happen ever again. Now, we have decided not to use the word condemn as of now, because we're still not too sure exactly what happened.
Shocking scenes of pro-democracy protesters at Hong Kong's airport beating 2 men accused of being infiltrators have sparked soul-searching within the movement over whether a minority of radicals are undermining their cause. Debate has appeared on web forums used by protesters, and one group even issued an apology after Tuesday night's chaotic scenes in which paranoia about undercover police reached new heights. In separate instances, during a paralyzing occupation of the city's airport, 2 men found themselves at the mercy of a mob. One was accused of being a mainland police officer and another of being a spy masquerading as a journalist. Both were detained, had their limbs bound by zip ties, and were beaten until crowds of fellow demonstrators and firemen managed to usher them to waiting ambulances. Beijing, which has refused to offer any concessions to protesters, jumped on the assaults Wednesday, accusing protesters of adopting terrorist-like actions. Within the protest movement, there was a palpable uneasiness over how Tuesday's violence had unfolded. Brazilians take to the streets in more than 80 cities across the country to protest against budget cuts to public education and other measures by President Jair Bolsonaro's government.
Nós estamos na rua para lutar e vamos estar sempre lutando para defender os nossos direitos. A gente não abre mão dos nossos direitos.
Up next, The WHO says Ebola drug breakthrough in DR Congo. Great news. Greta Thunberg departs for a 2-week sailing trip to the U.S. NASA descends on Icelandic lava field to prepare for Mars. These stories and more when Eagle News returns. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News. The World Health Organization said the modifications in Ebola treatment in DR Congo are great news as researchers announced that 2 prototype drugs boost chances of surviving the dreaded disease.
Modifications have been made to the treatment of Ebola patients in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Patients will now receive one of 2 investigational Ebola treatments. It's Regeneron or MAB 114. A review of randomized controlled trial, or called RCT, data by an independent data safety monitoring board found that 2 of the treatments outperformed the 2 others. These are great news, of course, and these news will save lives and moves us closer to finding an effective treatment for Ebola. A total cure, again, may not be possible. Even if you have a 100% effective drug, it still leaves the human factor of reaching care early enough.
Jean-Jacques Muyembe, newly appointed by President Felix Tshisekedi to coordinate the year-long campaign against Ebola, said that out of 4 confirmed cases in the eastern city of Goma, 2 have been cured after 11 days of treatment. Expressing his great joy, Professor Muyembe said, quote, "This is a strong message for us that Ebola is curable. Today, the drugs are there." On Monday, the U.S. National Institute of Health said 2 drugs out of 4 being tested among Ebola patients in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo had significantly boosted survival rates. The 2 drugs, known by their lab names as REGN-EB3 and MAB114, belong to a class of treatments called monoclonal antibodies, which are designed to bind to the virus and neutralize it. A total of 681 people had been recruited for the trial, which began in November. Data from 499 patients found that mortality among those who had been given REGN-EB3 fell to 29%, compared to a typical death rate of 60 to 67% among those who had not been treated. The mortality rate for NAB114 was 34%. A total of 1,892 deaths have been recorded since the outbreak began on August 1st, 2018. Teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg set sail for New York on Wednesday, heading for a UN summit on a zero-emissions yacht skippered by a member of Monaco's ruling family. The 16-year-old Swede, whose school strikes have inspired children across the world to protest against global warming, refuses to fly because of the carbon emissions caused by planes. But she has been offered a lift on the Malaysia 2 racing yacht, along with her father Savante, and a filmmaker to document the journey that will allow her to attend the UN talks in September with a clear conscience. The voyage will take about a fortnight, a daunting prospect for someone who has never sailed before this week, but Thunberg said she was willing to accept a bit of seasickness and a lack of comfort. Thunberg told reporters in the English port of Plymouth, quote, "I am one of the very few people in the world who actually can do this, and I think I should take that chance." A few minutes later, she taxied out to the Malaysia on an electric motorboat and stepped onto the yacht as a group of people on a passing sailboat applauded her. The 60-foot or 18-meter yacht is skippered by Pierre Casiraghi, vice president of the Monaco Yacht Club and a member of the Principality's ruling family, and German round-the-world sailor Boris Herrmann. It can travel at speeds of around 35 knots or 70 kilometers an hour, but will be heading into the wind for much of the time, so will be slower, and the captain wants a smooth ride. To prepare for the next mission to Mars in 2020, NASA has taken to the lava fields of Iceland to get its new robotic space explorer ready for the job. With its black basalt sand, windswept dunes, and craggy peaks, the Lamberon lava field at the foot of Iceland's second biggest glacier, Langjökull, was chosen as a stand-in for the red planet's surface. For 3 weeks, 15 scientists and engineers sent by the U.S. Space Agency descended on the site, 100 kilometers or 62 miles from the capital Reykjavik, last month to develop a prototype. It will aim to continue the work of the Curiosity rover, which has been exploring Mars since 2012 and making preparations for human exploration. Experts say that Iceland, a volcanic island in the middle of the North Atlantic, is in many ways reminiscent of the fourth planet from the Sun.
We were getting exactly the kind of patterns of material transport that the scientists want to see. So it's a very good analog for Mars exploration.
The company has been commissioned by NASA to test a rover prototype as part of the SAND-E, or the Semi-Autonomous Navigation for Detrital Environments project.
The main reason that we come here is because of the mineralogy. The mineralogy in Iceland is very similar to what we would find on Mars.
When we come back, in center stage, one-act play, The Lesson Plan, touches on personal loss and relationships. Eagle News will return shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Eagle News. I'm Anna Cui. Part of the In Center Stage project of the Church of Christ, Hawaii's one-act play entry for this year is The Lesson Plan, a story about surviving personal loss and dealing with relationships. Alfred Acenas with more.
The story revolves around Mr. Mendoza, a school teacher whose wife succumbed to cancer, and Sam, a young student whose father passed away. One day, Sam accepts her teacher's offer to learn the ukulele and enter a music competition. However, as they prepare for the said event, Sam has to choose between her competing priorities, which soon drives a wedge between teacher and student. Meanwhile, Mr. Mendoza discovers a life-changing lesson of his own.
Just some unique aspects about the lesson plan story itself. This is an adaptation of the in-cinema version of the same title, which was also a nominee for the Excellence in Visual Media Awards in Los Angeles last year.
For the most part, we kept everything the same. We wanted the story to remain the same lessons to be taught. The only difference is that we don't have the magic of video editing, we don't have the luxuries of multiple takes, and so we really had to work with the cast on being able to tell the same story once and tell it well.
Brother Marcel Ramirez, the INC supervising minister for Hawaii Pacific, cited that Sam's personal conviction and perseverance amid her trials at a young age should serve as an example for all those who have watched the play and might be experiencing similar situations.
And it's so delighting that they showed a little girl who was so faithful, and she believed in what God can do despite what she went through, and she showed that strength in her faith, and she's even able to bear fruit, and that's so really, inspiring.
Meanwhile, those in attendance were touched with tonight's performance.
I think it was emotional.
It was emotional? What part was emotional?
When the kid was, when Sam invited Rec, the teacher, but he never came. First time she invited him. Yeah, making the promise.
Yeah? You think everybody should watch the play?
Everybody should watch the play, yes.
At the conclusion of the program, church members presented musical numbers as a preview and invitation for their upcoming Aid to Humanity community outreach to be held at their Eva Beach House of Worship later this month.
Yes, on August 25, we will be holding our district-wide evangelical mission. And that's also with a Lingap sa Mamamayan or Aid to Humanity. So we will be donating foods to some shelters or food banks here in Hawaii, in all the islands actually, where there are congregations of the church. And hopefully, and we've been praying, that will be a successful one. We would like to thank, of course, all the brethren who came here, who participated, and even those from other congregations. But most of all, we would like to thank Brother Eduardo Manalo for approving this kind of activity that truly inspires the brethren. And also, we thank him for his love and concern that he continues to show all the brethren all over the world. Thank you so much, Sir, for all your love and concern for all of us.
For now, I am Alfred Asenas from Honolulu, Hawaii, 1 with 25.
Thanks, Alfred. That is today's Eagle News. Join us tomorrow for the weekend edition. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and Facebook at facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I'm Anna Kui, and I'm 1 with 25.